A couple of years ago, I made a video about why Turkey should be kicked out of NATO. In the meantime, I also wrote a book which revolves around NATO kicking Turkey out. But in that video, I focused on why Turkey should no longer be in the alliance. In this video, I want to focus on how that can be achieved. Turkey is really becoming a thorn on the West side again, from Sweden's membership bid to global tensions. As it is, I want to touch on finally separating the West from Ankara, as several people deem it impossible.
Is it possible to kick a country out of NATO? The question is mostly coming up in regards to Turkey, the frenemy of the group, which is currently blocking the entry of Sweden into the defensive alliance. As NATO requires unanimous approval for a new member, this gives every member veto power. Turkey is using its veto to extract concessions out of Sweden regarding two groups that oppose the Erdogan government. Some politicians have suggested expelling Turkey from the alliance for this and other reasons, but it's not clear if there's a way to do that. There's no procedure in the NATO charter for expulsion or suspension, but part of the agreement states that NATO can cease aiding a member if the country fails to safeguard democracy and the rule of law. Would NATO go so far with Turkey? Analysts say it's unlikely. This is because Turkey is close to Russia geographically and plays a key strategic role in stopping Russia from controlling the waters in the region. And keeping Ankara happy is a critical part of NATO's role in defending Ukraine.
Point from the rest of NATO is a symptom of the underlying fact that Turkey was never really a natural NATO member. And some commentators have even suggested kicking Turkey out of the alliance altogether in order to make space for the more natural Nordic candidates. So, on to the last part of this video. Could Turkey actually be expelled from NATO? Well, the short answer is no, even if Erdogan did end up blocking Nordic accession. For starters, there's no legal mechanism for actually kicking someone out of NATO, and doing so would introduce an unnecessary uncertainty into the world's most successful military alliance. But more importantly, Turkey is just far too important to NATO. Turkey's control over the Turkish Straits helps NATO contain Russia, and Turkey's military, recently made famous by the success of their drone strikes in Ukraine, is one of the most powerful militaries within the alliance. So that's ultimately why NATO have turned a blind eye to Turkey's various hiccups in the past.
And principles. Consequently, there are experts who propose that NATO should re-evaluate its accommodation of Turkey and contemplate the possibility of removing it from the alliance. However, removing Turkey from NATO is a difficult decision. Turkey's strategic location and military strength provide important advantages to the alliance.
It's quite clear that these people are either unaware of the possible loopholes that exist or are supportive of Ankara's regime. They simply ignore all the red flags, such as relations with Russia and China, stance on Iran, the fact that it is becoming a dictatorship with an ever-shrinking press freedom and individual liberties. I've mentioned all that in my previous video. What has also changed is, in the last 5 years, since I made the previous video, is that it has gotten into a lot of contention with Western nations, including other NATO nations, over very ridiculous things. What I dislike the most is that they demand that countries in Europe make criticizing Islam illegal. Their response to the Quran burnings in Sweden and political cartoons in France are examples. They expect to tell us what laws we need to implement.
Müslümanların kutsallarına hakaret etmenin düşünce hürriyeti olmadığını, batılı kibir abidelerine eninde sonunda öğreteceğiz.
But the worst of them all is the fact that they're threatening to invade Greece. They've even set up a plan called Operation Chaka Bay, which outlines their targeting of several Greek islands and to delimitate territorial waters, national airspace, as well as exclusive economic zones. Erdogan has even boasted about wielding ballistic missiles that can reach Athens. Can you imagine the ramifications if a European nation said such a thing?
Ey Yunan, bak tarihe bak. Tarihe dön. Çok daha fazla ileri gidersen bunun bedeli ağır olur, ağır. Yunanistan'a bizim tek cümlemiz var. İzmir'i unutma. Adaları işgal etmeniz filan bizi bağlamaz. Vakti, saati geldiğinde gereğini yaparız. Bir gece ansızın gelebiliriz.
Before I go into the process of how Turkey can be kicked out of NATO, let me address the three main arguments for keeping it in the alliance.
Why is Turkey so important to NATO? Turkey's become a headache for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Run by a hard-headed, authoritarian-leaning leader, the country frequently flexes its power to extract concessions from would-be members and is frequently on the edge of war with fellow member Greece. Despite this, though, it might be one of NATO's most important members. Turkey's actually a fairly strong military power. It has the second largest NATO army in terms of military personnel and is a key player in alliance missions and operations. It also has more direct military concerns than many members, which makes it valuable in the case of a serious conflict. And that serious conflict is here. Since the war began between Russia and Ukraine, Turkey's influence has increased due to its control over the Black Sea. As one of the bordering countries, it stood in the way when Putin tried to seize total control of the key shipping routes that go through the sea, a conflict that may be about to start up again. All this means is that when Turkey makes demands, odds are all of NATO will be listening, and they might decide that the benefits of keeping them happy outweigh the potential negative.
The first argument is for access to the Black Sea. They claim that the only way to reach it is by passing through the two straits controlled by Turkey. By claiming such, they fail basic geography, as there is a way to reach the Black Sea without going through Turkish waters. Any NATO vessels in the open ocean can enter the Rhine River through the Netherlands. They can enter through Rotterdam, and the river itself is large enough to allow ships passage all the way to central Germany. Once there, they could cross the canal linking the Rhine to Europe's second largest river, the Danube. It was built in 1992 and has always acted as an artery from the North Sea to the Black Sea. Once on the Danube, things get tricky, as the 1948 Convention on the Danube prohibits naval vessels from passing unless they go in by arrangements made by Danubian states. As it is, the only thing needed is for consent to be placed for the passage. Once through, the Maritime Task Force would have free access to the Black Sea, where they can engage any military targets there. It may be a longer route, but it will still provide more advantages. The next argument is that of Turkey's military. Turkey has the third largest military in NATO in terms of manpower. It also has experience in combat due to its intervention in both the Libyan and Syrian civil wars. But does the size alone tell us anything about their actual combat power? The reason why Turkey's military is so big is that it has a conscription policy. It has troops that are poorly trained and have low morale. According to Turkish law, any man that has lost 2 fingers or more is unable to serve. As a result, many young men will proceed to intentionally mutilate their fingers to get a deferment. Draft dodging has become a crime in Turkey, and it is one of the reasons as to why the country is experiencing a brain drain. As such, the age of conscription is now 41, one of the highest in the world. The World Bank data puts their defense spending in 2020 at $17 billion, which was 13% less than the previous year. It is also worth noting that corruption is a big part of the Turkish government. Turkey ranks 36 on the Global Corruption Index, and one of the requirements for being a NATO member is to make sure that the government has oversight of its military and defense budget. There have been some questions raised about the transparency of Turkey's spending, with their government agencies unable to audit the money spent on their forces. Gaps have been made all over the years, especially in recent ones. Also, in 2022, Turkey ranked 13th out of 142 members on global firepower, putting it behind even other European NATO members. As it seems, Turkey simply won't be up to par in joint measures. During NATO's war in Afghanistan, only 290 troops were deployed, and they have mostly taken part in security, training, and construction projects during their time there. Not only that, but they weren't popular there, neither in Libya or in Syria. So now we get to the question of the video. How can Turkey be kicked out? That also goes with the final argument, meaning that there is no article which talks about evicting a member. However, there is a loophole. According to Article 60 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties made in 1969, a material breach of a bilateral treaty by one party allows the other party to invoke the breach as grounds for terminating the treaty or suspending its operation in whole or in part. In order for a nation to join NATO, it must satisfy certain prerequisites to be eligible for membership. It must be in Europe, follow democratic principles, and it must be able to contribute to the security of the Euro-Atlantic area. In my previous video, I have talked about how Turkey does not satisfy these boxes. To constitute a material breach, the violation of the principles underlying the treaty would have to be so extensive and so severe that it would lead to a disavowing of the treaty. Official statements issued by member states, including the Brussels summit back in 2018, repeatedly affirm these principles. A member state that violates them in a systematic and egregious manner would thus cast doubt on the very resolve of that ally to fulfill its commitments. That is why, if these conditions for the existence of a material breach are satisfied, NATO's member states would be entitled by unanimous agreement to suspend the operation of the treaty in whole or in part to terminate it either in their relations with the defaulting state or among them all. For the purpose of a unanimous decision of the North Atlantic Council, excluding the defaulting state would suffice. They would also entitle other NATO nations to suspend or scale back their military cooperation with Turkey, as many have done so already. The best part about this is that this is all legal. The absence of a suspension mechanism in the North Atlantic Treaty does not prevent the North Atlantic Council from suspending or terminating the membership of a state found to be in material breach of the treaty. This is what needs to be done now.